Elliot Davidson owns an insurance agency that provides him with a seven-figure annual income. Elliot's wife of 14 years, Lynn, started her affair with Dr. John, Jack, Wallace shortly after his arrival at the Washburn Medical Center where Lynn worked. Lynn and Jack's twice-a-week at lunchtime affair wasn't enough for Jack, so he made reservations at a nearby resort to spend a weekend with her. Lynn had no idea that Elliot knew about the affair, so Lynn decided to tell him that she would be spending the weekend with a man and claim it was a no big thing, one-time deal. The story picks up when she returns from her weekend with several well-thought-out answers to the angry response she expected from him. Friday afternoon, Lynn told her husband Elliot that she was going to spend the weekend in a hotel with a doctor from the medical center where she worked. He of course responded by forbidding it. She came back with something from her childhood. "You're not the boss of me. I can do whatever I please." He started to answer her, but she quickly left and slammed the front door behind her. Elliot looked out the front window and saw a white Mercedes in the driveway. As she got in, the male driver leaned over for a lingering kiss. She came back early Sunday from her weekend of cheating, hoping that her husband of 14 years would still be asleep so he wouldn't confront her until she had time to shower and change clothes, but it wasn't to be. He was waiting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, working on the crossword puzzle from the Daily Tribune. He looked up and asked, "How was your weekend, dear?" She hadn't expected him to say that. She didn't know how to respond and tried to come up with something clever to change the subject. But her mind was paralyzed by his response. She had played this confrontation several times in her mind and was braced for a big argument, so she had come up with several possible answers to defuse him. She was expecting that he would yell at her, wave his arms and curse. That's what a normal husband would do. And in her mind he was a normal husband and would react like one. Her plan was to smother him with love and sex until he forgot his anger, but his nonchalant attitude now left her uncertain about how to proceed. She stuttered, It was fun. Then she thought, shit, what a stupid thing for me to say. Damn it, I don't have a response to what he just asked me. I spent half an hour last week coming up with answers, comebacks to all of his possible reactions, all except this one. He said, "Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So the sex was good, I take it? Was it better than sex with me?" She looked down at the floor and so she didn't have to look him in the eyes. No, Elliot. You're much better in bed than he's ever been. Fuck, I think I just told him this wasn't the first time I had sex with Roger. She stood there for a couple of minutes waiting for him to continue. When he didn't, she got angry. "Is that all you're going to say?" He replied, "This conversation is over unless you have something to add." "Damn you, Elliot. Don't you have anything else to say to me?" she answered and ran upstairs to the bedroom. When he heard the bedroom door slam, he thought, "That's not what I expected. She didn't even apologize or tell me it was their first time together and that it's really me she loves. She doesn't know that I have proof of the time she shared a bed with that supercilious jackass." She had tossed her purse onto the table when she first came in and it landed with her cell phone halfway out of it. He thought, should I take a quick look at who she's been talking to? No, I already know everything I need to know. He heard her yank open the bedroom door and rush downstairs to grab her phone. "Were you snooping around on my phone?" "Now why would I do that, Lynn? Have you got something to hide?" She didn't answer as she ran back up to the bedroom and locked the door. Her husband went into his home office and locked the door. He put on a pair of headphones and with a few keystrokes on his computer keyboard he was listening into her side of the conversation through the microphone he had hidden in the bedroom, right alongside the GoPro wireless video camera. On the camera he watched her punch in his number. "Jack, I'm glad I caught you. I just got home." No, he wasn't mad. "When I walked past him he asked me if I enjoyed the weekend and if the sex was good." "No, I'm not kidding. Not one word of anger. I couldn't believe it. I have no idea why. After I told him I was spending the weekend with you and there was nothing he could do about it, I really expected a big blow up when I got back. No, it's not possible that he knows about our affair. He doesn't have clue about all the long lunches we spent in bed together. No, I was not hoping he would get angry enough to have a heart attack. I know you would like that so you could marry me, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to leave him just yet. Somehow I still love him, a little." "No, that's not what I meant. I love you a whole lot more than I love Elliot. And if you were here I would show you just how much that is. You know you can't come over now. You will have to wait until he's at work like we've been doing. No, I don't know what he's thinking and it's driving me crazy. Yeah, I love you too, sweetie. Bye. Elliot ran the conversation through his voice-to-text program, printed it out, and put it in his antique Wells Fargo safe along with all the other evidence he had collected. It was their love-making that initially alerted Elliot that something funny might be going on. Even as long as they had been married, making love was something they did almost every night. But then something changed. She put him off more frequently when he approached her for sex. He had asked her about it a couple of times, but she just said she was tired from her workload at the medical center. He decided that it must be the beginning of menopause and left it at that. But the fact that she seldom said yes on Monday or Thursday nights bothered him a little. The next clue was more difficult to pass up. One Thursday the client he was to have lunch with canceled out at the last minute, so he thought he would ask his wife to lunch. Wanting to surprise her, he lowered his voice half an octave and asked her assistant to connect him with Lynn Davidson. Her answer surprised him when he was told that she was out to lunch with Dr. Wallace. Elliot asked, "Who is Dr. Wallace?" Mary told him that he was a new doctor that had started at the clinic earlier that year. "When do you expect them back?" "It could take a while. They usually take long lunches together." Elliot said in his normal voice, "Well, this is her husband. Please have her call me the minute she gets in." "Oh, Mr. Davidson, I didn't know it was you on the phone." Thinking fast, she continued, "What I just told you was the cover story she asked me to use. She has an annoying client that keeps calling her. She's really out with some colleagues from the office to celebrate one of their birthdays. I'm sorry for giving you the wrong information." "Well, I'm glad you cleared that up. Who is the birthday girl? I'd like to send a happy birthday email." It was Susan, I believe." "That's funny. Lynn never mentioned that she worked with someone named Susan. Can you give me her email address?" I'm afraid I can't do that, Mr. Davidson. It's against company policy." At this point he was almost certain there was something going on with Lynn. Maybe with the new doctor. He decided he didn't want her to know about his conversation with Mary, so he closed with, "Okay, don't tell her I called. We can talk about it when she gets home tonight. Bye, Mary." As soon as he hung up, he called a private investigator friend of his. "Sam, how are you doing, buddy? Elliot, I get calls like this every month or two. I know you don't give a rat's ass about my state of health, so what do you want?" "I'm sorry, Sam. I should have known I couldn't fool you. No fool. I think Lynn is seeing another man." "How sure are you of this?" "The evidence at this point isn't concrete, but I need to know for sure if she's cheating." Sam thought for a minute. "It will cost you a few grand, but I'm one of the best in the state for this kind of thing. And I have a staff of agents that is very good at collecting hard evidence. Give me the details and I'll get back to you in 3 or 4 weeks. "Thanks, Sam." It was less than 3 weeks when Elliot got the phone call. "Hi, Elliot. What have you got for me, Sam? You're not going to like it. She has been spending 1 or 2 extended lunchtimes a week with a new doctor on the staff, a Dr. John Wallace. He goes by Jack. Sometimes they go to a hotel, but other times she takes him home and they do it there. Do you want me to continue surveilling her?" Elliot almost choked up. "No, send me a written report on what you have and I'll take it from here." "Sorry, friend." Elliot wasn't shocked by what Sam told him. In his heart he had already dealt with the pain when the evidence started to build up. He sat at his desk in the Davidson Insurance Building, a business he had created from scratch that was now the 3rd largest casualty insurance agency in the state. Random thoughts ran through his head for a while. He even thought, "I should have made this building taller so I could jump off the roof, but a fall from the 4 stories we have now would just cripple me." He decided it was time to put his analytical mind to work and figure out how to deal with this. After considering all the options, divorce seemed to be a good choice, so he made an appointment to see his lawyer the next day. The news wasn't good. "No matter how you go about this, you are going to get screwed, Elliot. Financially, I can handle a 50-50 split. As you know, I have accumulated a lot of wealth." "How much of that is in the insurance company's name?" "Well, off the top of my head, a little more than half. If she decides to go after you with a good lawyer, she could claim that she was essential to your success and get as much as half of the company. That would gut the company. I wouldn't be able to stay in business. In that case, my advice to you is to bide your time and hope she screws up somewhere down the line." So you're saying I'm fucked? That's about it, for now anyway. What about her adultery? Unless you have kids, that's useless in this situation. 3 months later, Elliot's headaches were getting worse. He assumed it was the stress of what he knew about his wife. He hadn't said a word to her about it yet because he wanted to develop a plan first. Separation? Divorce? Open marriage? None of them appealed to him. The following week the decision was taken out of his hands when he met with his doctor. The doctor had several tests run on him, and now Dr. Jenkins was going to reveal what they showed. When he entered the office, Jenkins stood, directed him to the chair in front of the desk, and closed the door. When he got back to his chair behind the desk, he looked up at Elliot. "Mr. Davidson, may I call you Elliot?" "Yes, but I can see by the look on your face that the news isn't good." "Get on with it, doctor. The tests have shown conclusively that you have a glioblastoma in the center of your brain." "What's that?" "It's the medical term for brain cancer." "So when can I get it removed?" "That's the thing, Elliot. We can't remove it without destroying your brain, killing you essentially. There is no cure for a glioblastoma like yours. The best we can do is give you medication for the pain." Elliot felt the blood drain from his face. After a few minutes he recovered somewhat from the shock and asked, "How long do I have?" "We can't be certain, but my best estimate is 4 months. This type of cancer is very aggressive." Elliot sat frozen in his chair for several minutes. Then he asked what those months would be like for him. "Other than the headaches you've been having, there shouldn't be any neurological effects for a couple of months. You should be able to function normally until that time. And then? Then your brain function will quickly deteriorate and you will have little control over your body or your mind. So by then someone will have to wipe my ass for me?" A crude way to phrase it, but that is essentially true. But you won't be fully aware by then. You will need a continuous morphine drip to control the pain until you pass away. "So you're telling me it's time to get my affairs in order?" "Yes. I'm sorry, but that's what you need to be doing. That and spending as much time as you can with those you love." Elliot stood and reached out to shake Dr. Jenkins' hand with tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you for being up front with me, doctor." The next Friday after supper, Elliot told Lynn he had work to do and locked himself in his basement office. He had originally decided to file for divorce, but now he realized that he would be dead before the divorce was finalized. "I have got to change my plan," he thought. "I need to find a way to keep my cheating wife from getting her hands on my money. I know it's mostly about revenge, but she has it coming. She has a job to support herself so she can get by financially, but not in the manner that I have provided for her." He turned to his computer and started running the numbers. It took him all day Saturday, but he finally came up with a revised plan. He printed out the timeline for his strategy and locked it in the safe, then sent the digital file to an off-site storage account that he started when he first found out about his wife and Dr. Wallace. When that was finished, he unlocked the office door, walked into the kitchen, and asked Lynn, "What's for supper, honey?" She turned and looked at him to see if he was teasing her, but his warm smile told her he was serious. She didn't know how to answer. Does this mean he has finally come to terms with my arrangement with Roger? Is he really okay with it? She decided to test the waters a bit. "You're in a good mood for a change, Elliot. What's making you so happy?" "I have come to a decision. I want our marriage to continue as it was before your getaway weekend with Roger. I mean, we were good then, right? We lived like a married couple should, the sex was good, we were happy more often than not. Why should one weekend of indiscretion change that?" I realized I was letting my male ego control me. Lynn turned off the stove and walked toward him, but still didn't believe he was sincere. "So what changed your mind?" "I remembered how comfortable we were with each other. I miss that and want it back." He opened his arms and said, "Come here. I need a hug." Lynn came forward tentatively, but when she got close to Elliot, he reached out his arms and pulled her into him. It took a moment or two before she could overcome her apprehension, but then she melted into his chest. He reached down, lifted her chin, and kissed her on the lips. It wasn't a passionate kiss because she was still holding back, expecting the other shoe to drop. When that didn't happen, she smiled and went back for something more exciting. She softened her lips and met his, this time for much longer. When he answered her tongue with his own, she knew she had him. She pushed her breasts against his chest, wishing she didn't have a bra on. She thought, a great start, but now I have to seal the deal. Once I'm through screwing him senseless, he will be putty in my hands. I'll have to be extra careful to keep my ongoing relationship with Roger under wraps, but we've been doing that all along. If I hadn't stupidly told him about our weekend, he still wouldn't know. Roger told me the only reason I did that was to demonstrate how much control I had over Elliot. I guess he was right about that. But never mind. Elliot is just a few orgasms away from being back under my control. She reached out for his hand. Come on, we have a lot of sex to catch up on, she said seductively as she pulled him up the stairs. When she woke up beside him the next morning, she thought back to the night before. God, that was good. I'll be walking funny for a day or so, but it was worth it. Why did I ever want to fuck Roger? Elliot is so much better at it. But I guess I still like the variety. Someday the affair will end and then Elliot can have me all to himself. 1 month later. Elliot was running out of time, but he wanted to confront her in public. He hoped Lynn and her lover would go out to dinner and he could show up at the restaurant, but the two of them didn't do that very often. Then fate provided an even better opportunity when Lynn told him during supper that the following weekend her company was having their annual awards banquet where she would be receiving the coveted Employee of the Year award. He smiled and said, "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. I'm sure you earned it." She beamed at him and told him, "Thank you, dear. How about we go upstairs and celebrate? You never have to ask me twice, you sexy thing. Will you let me give you some FaceTime first?" "Of course, honey. You know what that does to me." They got up and he followed her up the stairs, watching her shed her clothes on the way. Afterwards they were laying in bed with Lynn cuddled up to him when he asked, "So tell me more about this banquet?" "Oh, it will be great. It's in the ballroom of the Lexington Hotel with a live dance band afterward." "How formal is this shindig? Do I have to wear a tux or will a classy suit be okay?" Lynn didn't respond at first, until Elliot turned and looked at her. "Well, which is it?" About that. You won't be going," she said quietly. His first reaction was to get angry until he remembered the role he was playing, so he asked, "Aren't spouses invited?" "They can be, but every employee is allowed only one guest." Elliot thought for a minute. "This would be the perfect opportunity for me to complete my plan. I have to get invited somehow." Elliot came up with the answer quickly. "Well, that shouldn't be a problem. Dr. Wallace is on the medical center staff, so he's not really a guest, is he?" "Not anymore. Roger went into private practice a couple of months ago, so he's no longer considered an employee of WMC." Elliot put a shocked look on his face. "So you're going to take him as your guest instead of me?" She looked down at the floor as she answered, "Yes." "Well, I don't see anything wrong in that as long as he gets you home at a decent hour." There was a long pause before she answered, "About that. Roger and I will be staying at the hotel for the weekend." Elliot was quiet for a few minutes, as he expected a normal husband would be. Then he replied, "I see. The last time you told me it would be only that once, but now you're going back for a repeat performance? I guess you lied to me then." No, Elliot. I didn't lie. I had no idea this opportunity would come up. It wasn't intentional. Roger said he wanted to do something special to celebrate my award and thought we could do it so much better alone in a hotel room." "So do you love him?" "Of course not, honey. I love only you. I would never do anything to hurt you or our marriage. This is just about me feeling young and attractive again. And sex with Roger does that." "Well, as long as it won't change our relationship, I suppose I can agree to it." "You mean you will let me do it?" "There doesn't seem to be anything I can say that will change your mind, so enjoy yourselves." Lynn threw herself at him and put her arms around his neck. "Oh, thank you, Elliot. You won't regret it. When I get home on Sunday, I'll make it up to you. You'll see." Monday morning, Elliot stopped by his office and told his personal assistant that he would be out of the office for a couple of days and that she could run the day-to-day business while he was away. The first key player in Elliot's plan was his personal attorney, Antonio Cordova. Cordova and Dr. Jenkins were the only people besides Elliot who knew that he would soon be dead because of the brain tumor. When that happened, Cordova would have a full power of attorney to open Elliot's safe after he was gone and remove all of the material inside it. This included his will, all the photos, videos, audio transcripts of the affair Elliot had collected, and everything related to his final instructions. A court officer and a newspaper reporter would be present as witnesses when these documents were opened and read aloud. He stopped by Cordova's office to make certain that everything was in place to be activated as soon as he was declared dead. Then he went to his investment banker to keep the appointment he had made last week. When he had first learned about Lynn's affair, he had all of his financial assets deposited into an account with a single investment bank, Morgan & Morgan. Now he sat across from his broker and told him that he would be retiring soon and wanted to give away most of his wealth to charitable organizations. Although the broker hesitated at first, giving Elliot a lecture on how to manage his money, he responded to a threat to move his account to a competitor. The distribution was to begin immediately and be completed by the end of the week. The last thing he did was to sign the title to his home over to the St. Jude Children's Cancer Research Hospital to be effective immediately after his death. He had no plans for his Mercedes-Benz. Lynn could have that, although she would probably have to sell it for money to live on. With a great feeling of relief now that the plan was put in motion, he decided to go home for the rest of the afternoon. As he approached his driveway, he saw another car parked there. He knew from Sam's intel that it belonged to Dr. Roger Wallace. Elliot drove to a nearby park and connected his laptop computer to his home network. He called up the camera and microphone hidden in the master bedroom, and sure enough, there they were, fucking like rabbits. He recorded every last filthy detail of it, then transferred the video files to his home server. He sent his lawyer an encrypted email instructing him to release the video to the internet soon after his death. 2 nights later, the doors to the ballroom of the Lexington Hotel opened for the awards banquet. Earlier that day, Elliot had bribed a woman neighbor to call the hotel and tell them that Dr. Wallace would be bringing an extra guest and to please set a place for him next to Mrs. Davidson. The new guest would be Dr. Defunta Vincitor. Elliot had spent the 2 prior nights staying in a room in the banquet hotel. Now he was in his room putting on his best Armani suit. After adding one other item, he snugged down his $300 Italian necktie, checked himself in the mirror, and headed for the ballroom. When he arrived, he stood in the shadows and checked out the venue. There were 2 large round tables at the front of the room, and he watched as Lynn and Dr. Wallace took their seats next to each other. After everyone was seated, Lynn wondered who was supposed to be in the empty seat beside her. She looked at the name placard and asked Roger who Dr. Vincitor was. Roger shook his head. Elliot murmured to himself, "There's the cue for my grand entrance." He went up to the maitre d' and identified himself as Dr. Vincitor. The man nodded and escorted him to the seat next to Lynn. She whispered to her lover, "This must be the Italian doctor." As Elliot/Defunta approached, Roger stood and reached out his hand. "Dr. Vincitor, I presume?" Elliot bowed and held out his hand, keeping Lynn from getting a clear view of his face. When he was seated, Lynn turned toward him and held out her hand. As he raised his head, she jerked her hand back and hissed through clenched teeth, "You. What are you doing here?" "Why, I came to see my loving wife get her reward," he said with a smile. "That's award, not reward, idiot." "We'll see." Lynn looked around for security, but just then her name was called to come up to the podium and receive her award. She went up and smiled at the director as he took her hand. "Ms. Davidson, I am pleased to present to you this award for Outstanding Employee of the Year. I have heard much about your dedicated work and unselfishness, and I want you to know I and the company appreciate your dedication to your job." With that, he gave her an engraved walnut plaque and waited for the photographer to take a couple of photos of them. Then the director sat down and gave the podium over to Lynn to express her thanks, which was the standard crap you hear in all these ego-inflating get-togethers. As Lynn turned to go back to her seat, her husband stood up and turned to the room full of people. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Lynn's husband Elliot, and I have my own award I would like to present to my wife. It involves a prize which is in this envelope." He held up a fancy envelope and handed it to her. She held it in her hand and turned again to leave the podium, but Elliot spoke to her and the audience loudly, "Please, open it so everyone can see what it is." She bashfully shook her head, but Elliot wasn't finished. "Come on everybody. Give the lady a hand." A member of the audience raised the cry, "Open it for us." She shook her head again until more of the crowd joined in the clamor to open it. Finally nodded yes, thinking Elliot's going to pay for this big time. "It will be a cold day in hell before he gets between my legs again." She opened the envelope and found some sheets of parchment inside. The writing was in an elaborate script font, leading Lynn to guess that it might not be so bad after all. She unfolded the paper, held it up for the audience. Then she turned it around so she could read it. Her face went white. Fuck. It's a divorce petition. Damn you, Elliot. You just had to do it in front of everyone. You're a real bastard. At that point she began to cry. Elliot held his hand up to quiet the crowd. I have one more thing to say to you, Lynn. You have been served. Lynn blushed deeply and started to leave the podium. Elliot took her hand and guided her back. I have one more gift for you, sweetheart. He reached inside his suit coat and withdrew his grandfather's World War II Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver, put it beneath his chin, and pulled the trigger. The hollow point bullet did exactly what it was designed to do. It took off the top of Elliot's head and splattered blood and brains for 10 feet around, covering the director, Lynn, and most importantly, Dr. Roger Wallace. The room was shocked into silence, except for the keening of Elliot's unfaithful wife. By the following Monday, Lynn had overcome her emotional shock enough to attend the opening of the old Wells Fargo safe. Elliot's lawyer had the safe brought to the conference room of Morgan & Morgan so all of the principals could be present. Cordova took the seat at the head of the table with Lynn to his right and Roger sitting next to her. As per Elliot's instructions, Lynn's parents and family members were also present. They showed up anticipating a share of Elliot's wealth. As the court officer dialed in the combination, Lynn leaned over and whispered to Roger. By the time we leave here we will be very rich, dear. We can live anywhere we want to and enjoy life to the fullest. I'm thinking maybe somewhere in the Caribbean. Roger leaned over to kiss her on the cheek, thinking, wow, did I luck out when I seduced her. Not only did I get several months of good pussy, but I'm going to end up rich too. As soon as we're married I'll divorce her and walk away with half of her fortune. His attention was brought back to the present by the sound of the heavy safe door swinging open. Elliot had labeled the compartments well and Cordova had a list of the order he wanted them revealed in. He cleared his throat to get their attention. The first thing Mr. Davidson wanted me to do is show everyone these videos which were taken the day he took his life. If you will direct your attention to the TV screen at the front of the room. He started the DVD that had select scenes from Lynn and Roger's sexual escapades the afternoon before the banquet. The time and date were prominently displayed on the screen. As soon as it was evident what they seen, Roger jumped up and shouted at Cordova, "Turn that damn thing off. You have no business showing that." Dr. Wallace, Mr. Davidson made it clear that anyone who leaves the room during this video will be ineligible to receive any part of his estate. Lynn pulled Roger down into his seat as the reporter at the other end of the table started taking notes. The video continued for almost 10 minutes with most of the women looking disgusted and most of the men watching intently. The next order of business is the reading of the will. Cordova removed the document and began reading the provisions. To my faithless wife Lynn I leave half of my all financial assets remaining after the distribution I have ordered upon my death. 1/4 of that total will go to Lynn's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harvey Blackstone, for doing such an amazing job raising their daughter and giving her a solid moral foundation to build her life upon. Next, the house. The house my wife and I shared for the entire 14 years of wedded bliss is now owned by a major charity. Lynn may live there for 60 days after my death, but she then must vacate the residence so the charity can put it up for sale. Prior to my death I arranged with my lawyer to settle all outstanding bills and debts, as well as to disburse specified amounts to each of several charities. Before this disbursement my estate was valued at just over $6 million. Cordova paused for 30 seconds as specified by Elliot in his instructions. The current value of his estate is $4,765, which will be apportioned among those designated to receive a share of the estate. The sound of everyone sucking in their breath was followed by silence for a brief time before Lynn began keening. Roger put his arm around her and helped her from the room as he thought, well, she won't be giving me any sex for a while. Time for me to seduce another beautiful rich woman to have an affair with. 2 days later, after Roger had said goodbye for good, Lynn opened up her computer for the first time since Elliot had killed himself. There were dozens of emails and messages from her friends, some comforting her but many others condemning her after seeing the sex video that was posted online. There was even one from a pornographic movie producer asking her to come to audition for a new movie he was making. She was about to delete them all when she saw that 2 of them were sent by Elliot on the day he shot himself. The first was a medical report showing that Elliot had only weeks to live when he killed himself. The second was simply one line that read, "Defunto vincitor" is Italian for dead winner. She slid to the floor as her keening echoed throughout the empty house.